that sort, I'm not an aviation expert, but a plane of that size, the sort of thing that's very, very common flying over the skies of New York.
And after all, the towers have been struck by bombers before, in February 1993.
Well, they were struck in an attack by a group of men who, most of them are Pakistani origin, but in a bomb attack which was certainly planned by Osama bin Laden, the Saudi Arabian terrorist leader who is currently living in Afghanistan.
Let me just tell you some news just coming in. We understand that one of the planes anyway, David, was hijacked before the crash. That would fit in with the scenario that you were suggesting.
Well, absolutely, and that must have been the first one. There's thought that that was a passenger plane hijacked and flown into the towers.
Well, let's just repeat for those of you who are just joining us on BBC1 and News 24. We're interrupting normal programs in order to show you these extraordinary pictures of both towers of the World Trade Center in New York, which have been struck. We understand by 2 passenger planes, one on each of the towers. Shortly before 2, the first of the towers was struck, that was the North Tower, and shortly after 2, that was the second of the towers was struck. Now we can cross over now to our correspondent Stephen Sveach, who joins us now. Stephen, what more can you tell us?
Well, the details are still just coming in. I think everybody here in Washington is going to be glued to these live pictures coming in at the moment. As you say, 2 planes crashed into the World Trade Center. These 2 towers are the tallest buildings in New York. And if, of course, this is pure speculation, but if this is some kind of deliberate attack, then really an attack of extraordinary symbolism, attacking the 2 tallest buildings in New York, and clearly a very big statement. But of course, at the moment, complete speculation as to what led to these planes crashing into the World Trade Center towers.
Stephen, we understand the United States State Department had warned Americans travelling abroad to be on their guard. Do you know anything further about this?
Yes, I mean that's something I hadn't heard about. No, but I think these warnings are issued from time to time, and I don't necessarily think we should read into that they knew something like this was going to happen. Of course, the US is the world's only superpower. US interests are under threat. A lot of the time, there are a lot of people around the world, various groups, who would like to hit at US targets. And as we saw in the embassy bombings in Africa just 3 years ago, the attack on the World Trade Center in 1993, to a certain extent, I think US interests are always a little bit threat. Therefore, warnings that are issued from time to time don't necessarily always mean that some sort of big attack is coming. So I think it's quite possible that the authorities here will have been taken completely by surprise if indeed this was some sort of attack.
Now, of course, we know that the World Trade Center was bombed once before, and in perhaps the United States' first big experience of terrorism in 1993.
Yes, and of course, terrorism, as we can call it, I think is a very unusual phenomenon within the United States. There were attacks, of course, on the embassies in Tanzania and Kenya that I mentioned earlier in 1998. But yes, domestic terrorism on US soil, very rare. The attack on the World Trade Center in 1993, then of course the Oklahoma bombing in 1995, for which Timothy McVeigh was recently put to death, and now this, and then of course there was also the bomb attack at the Olympics in Atlanta in 1996. But incidents of this kind, pretty rare on US soil, if indeed this is a terrorist incident. And I think this is going to cause a huge shock all the way around the country.
OK, let's up some, just if you've just joined us. You're looking at live pictures of the World Trade Center. These are the twin towers in the financial district of Manhattan. What you're seeing is both towers now on fire. Shortly before 2 o'clock our time in the United Kingdom, shortly before 9 a.m. the first tower, the North Tower, hit. Thereafter the South Tower hit by a plane, a small passenger plane. We understand that at least one of the planes had been hijacked before crashing into the towers.
Now, ABC television in the United States has suspended its normal coverage. Let's go to them to find out what they are saying about this extraordinary sight.
Traveling from north to south, struck the North Tower here of the World Trade Center, very near the top, near the 80th floor from what we are hearing, creating that gaping hole that you see in the north side of the building. Shortly after that, as the first building was engulfed in flames, in flames. We were on our way to the scene and we witnessed a second airplane from what I believe in my experience to be a Boeing 737 strike the south side of the second tower, the south tower, and that is the second row of flames that you see here. That airplane appeared to hit a little bit down the building around the 50th or 60th floor. Again, it struck flush into the south side of the South World Trade Center building. And this is actually here appears to be debris that has passed through the building and is currently on fire. As far as air traffic in the New York metropolitan area, we can tell you what we're hearing from air traffic control is that all operations at the New York airports, being Newark, John F. Kennedy International, and LaGuardia Airport, all air traffic operations has been suspended. As far as other aircraft traffic right now, us included, we are being kept at a distance of 5 miles from the site of this absolute disaster. We cannot get a good look at what is happening on the ground, but again, initial eyewitness reports from the scene stated that actually very little of the debris from the airplane fell down to the street. Most of it appears to be embedded in the buildings here, both World Trade Center number 1 and World Trade Center number 2.
John, can you hear me?
And that is coverage in the United States of America. That was ABC television there reporting live on the World Trade Center, as you can see there, on fire. After 2 plane crashes, we think suggestions at the moment that may have been deliberate at the World Trade Center, and the FBI is now investigating those first reports that those 2 plane crashes are the result of foul play. We've certainly had 1 report so far saying that at least one of the planes was hijacked before it crashed into the South Tower. We think that might have been a small Boeing 737. Obviously, the eyes of America are now on this. We've heard that all plane operations have been suspended at the 2 main airports in New York, at JFK Airport and LaGuardia Airport. Let me bring in our Foreign Affairs correspondent, David Loyne. Absolute devastation.
Absolutely. I mean, it's difficult to imagine the context of this. I suppose if it is terrorism, it's to do with the Middle East. There was this rather curious attack over the weekend by Arabs, apparently posing as cameramen, who certainly severely wounded, possibly killed the main opposition leader in Afghanistan. A lot of this goes back to Afghanistan. Osama bin Laden, the leader of, we're seeing again there the slow motion of the plane hitting the side of the building, the second plane that was. Osama bin Laden, the leader of a Saudi Arabian dissident group now living in Afghanistan, certainly responsible for the attack on the World Trade Center before in 1993, and that attack